Jameis Winston, to me, is the most underrated and disrespected quarterback in the NFL. For the life of me, I never understood why it has taken so long for Jameis Winston to get another opportunity as a starting quarterback in this league. Because say what you want about his turnover issues. We saw the nuclear game that he had Monday night against the Denver Broncos. He threw 6 touchdowns, but I'd rather have a quarterback that turns the ball over a lot but can put points up on the board for me than just have a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, Aiden O'Connell, Will Levis, who just can't move the ball for me at all. Jameis Winston, for as turnover prone as what he is, at least you know that you have a quarterback that is capable of leading you down the field and putting points up on the board. I'd rather have a quarterback that takes a lot of risk than have a quarterback that just does nothing but throw checkdowns all game. Jameis Winston has 11 touchdowns to 7 interceptions this year. And we kind of forget how he led the Browns to that comeback win against the Baltimore Ravens not too long ago. He had 3 touchdowns in that game and no interceptions. The Cleveland Browns, with how their cap situation is looking due to the bad contract that they paid Deshaun Watson, they really don't have any options in terms of finding a better quarterback than what they already have right now in Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, you can bring him back on a pretty reasonable contract. You're not going to be able to drive Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, 2 of the best quarterbacks coming out of the 2025 quarterback class. And if you can't get one of those guys, then there is no point in you drafting a quarterback in the first round at all, because you already have a quarterback in Jameis Winston that is good enough to lead you to the playoffs. You see, the thing with Jameis Winston is that to win with him, you have to be able to limit the reckless. And the way to do that is by only allowing him to throw the ball no more than 25 times. Y'all forgot how good Jameis Winston was Sean Payton's final season in New Orleans. Before Jameis Winston had that season-ending injury in 2021 against the Buccaneers, he had the New Orleans Saints at 5-1, 5-2, I believe, on top of the NFC South Division. This is with Tom Brady playing, by the way. And Sean Payton had Jameis Winston playing the most efficient football of his career. He had the best touchdown to interception ratio in the league at that time prior to going down that season-ending injury. So Jameis Winston has showed that if you are playing in the system that can put a cap on how many times you're asking him to throw the football, you can win with him. Jameis Winston is one of those quarterbacks that, as long as you're not relying on him to win the game for you by throwing 40 and 50 times in the game, he can take care of the football. But the more you ask Jameis Winston to throw the ball, the more you increase his chances of making a mistake, because he's an aggressive quarterback. But in a league where you have so many quarterbacks that are scared to take shots downfield, that only want to dink and dunk to get their way down the field, it's refreshing to have a guy that actually, increases the productivity of your offense. A guy who makes your offense more explosive. And from a fantasy football standpoint, Jameis Winston is a fantasy football cheat code. You can have him throw 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and he still has over 20 points in the game. Look at how good Jerry Jeudy has been with Jameis Winston. Jerry Jeudy has been one of the biggest disappointments in NFL draft history. If you look at all of his fancy footwork videos in the offseason, him doing all of these crazy routes, running the entire route tree to perfection, you would think Jerry Jeudy is one of the best receivers in the NFL, but the production just hasn't matched, the hype. But ever since Jameis Winston has taken over, Jerry Jeudy has had the best season of his career. The dude just went for over 200 yards against his former team on Monday Night Football. Cedric Tillman, when they got rid of Amari Cooper, I was excited to see what Cedric Tillman could do, because I felt he was one of the more underrated receivers coming out of his draft class. I felt he was better than Jalen Hyatt. And when Cedric Tillman was healthy, he was making a lot of big plays with Jameis Winston. Because of Jameis Winston taking over at quarterback for the Browns, he's helped everybody realize just how good this team is. Does he have to do a better job taking care of the football? Yes, but This is what comes with Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is more closer to Brett Favre than what Jordan Love is, in my opinion. This dude is the ultimate gunslinger, the ultimate risk taker. And I have no problem with the guy throwing a couple of interceptions as long as he can put 20 points or more on the board for me. Throwing 2 interceptions that result in pick sixes, that's a different story. But 9 times out of 10, the chances of him throwing, 2 interceptions in a game are pretty much slim to none. But I remember when Jameis Winston had that 30 for 30 season when he threw 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, but threw for over 5,000 yards. You can see the best and worst out of Jameis Winston at times. But for the Browns, with the quarterback play that they've gotten out of Deshaun Watson the last couple of years, it makes a lot of sense to continue to roll with the Jameis Winston machine for at least one more year. He could be a really good bridge quarterback. And if you are a team that needs a quarterback like the Raiders, the Giants, the Titans, or anybody else, and you don't want to trade up for one in next year's draft, Jameis Winston could be a good alternative for you. Imagine what he could do on the New York Jets with Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson. The Jets got a really good team. And right now, to me, Jameis Winston, there's about, 7 quarterbacks that I could see Jameis Winston starting over right now. I couldn't name them all because we don't got enough time for that. But I've always been surprised at how Jameis Winston has been viewed, because despite the interceptions, at least he moves the ball down the field. You got guys like Kenny Pickett who've been starting, and Mason Rudolph, Will Levis, who just the offense just can't get going with those guys at quarterback. At least with Jameis, you know that you're guaranteed to at least get the 20 points. And Jameis Winston has had some good performances against some of the better teams in the league. Remember when he led the Browns to that win over the Steelers on Thursday Night Football, playing in the middle of a freaking blizzard? The Steelers couldn't really throw the football that effectively in that game, but Jameis Winston could. Jameis Winston outplayed Russell Wilson. He somewhat outplayed Lamar Jackson when they went head-to-head. Jameis Winston, to me right now, is a top 20 quarterback. If you are a quarterback-needy team and you don't really want to invest all the capital to trade up for Shedeur or Cam Ward, Jameis Winston is the next best thing on the market. For the life of me, I've never understood why the perception of Jameis Winston has always been so low just because he's a turnover machine. You can corral the turnovers if you don't ask him to win games throwing the ball 30, 40 freaking times. Sean Payton did it. So if Sean Payton can do it, why can't anybody else? Jameis Winston is so underappreciated and so disrespected with how he's viewed by NFL fans. I was seeing Browns fans on X talking about how they don't want Jameis Winston back. Like, what do you mean you don't want Jameis Winston back? You really want to see what DTR has? We know what DTR has. Nothing. He's a third stringer. He's right where he belongs. Jameis Winston is the best that the Browns can do at quarterback. Shedeur and Cam Ward are not going to want to play for you. You are a dysfunctional franchise. Shedeur, Deion Sanders already said that he's going to make sure he goes to the right situation. I don't see how he allows Shedeur to go to Cleveland. And I don't even think Cam Ward will be on the board when it's your turn to pick, because with how good Jameis Winston is, you're not going to be picking that high in the draft. You're going to rattle off at least 2, 3 meaningless wins that take you out of position to even be able to land any of the top signal callers. So you might as well roll with Jameis Winston for another year. Listen, if you are the Giants or the Raiders or somebody, you should have picked up Jameis Winston in the offseason. I was really surprised that the Giants signed Drew Lock instead of Jameis. I was shocked that the Raiders went with Gardner Minshew over Jameis Winston because he moves the ball downfield. He may have a lot of interceptions, but at least he put points up on the board for you. If you have a good defense that can make up for the turnovers, you can win games with Jameis Winston. And in spite of all of the interceptions that Jameis Winston has thrown this season with the Browns, he's been better taking care of the football now than what he ever was with the Buccaneers. I mean, this dude was just a turnover magnet. At least this season, he's had some games where he hasn't thrown an interception, or he's only thrown 1 interception. And he's an incredible guy to have in your locker room. When you listen to the pregame speeches, yeah, they might sound a little bit, obnoxious, a little bit corny to some people. I love his pregame speeches. But no matter how you feel about them, the players love them. You know, when they look at Jameis Winston and they hear these pregame speeches, they get amped up. They really have rallied behind Jameis. And with how bad this season has gone for the Browns, it's refreshing for Kevin Stefanski to have a guy that can still keep the morale of the team high, that can still have guys wanting to play good football and not just mail it in on the season just because they're out of playoff contention. A big reason why the Browns are still a competitive football team is because of Jameis Winston. If they still had Deshaun Watson out there and it was still this bad, the team would be getting blown out by 30, 40 points. Jameis Winston has brought an infectious energy into this Browns franchise that was definitely needed with how bad the Deshaun Watson situation has turned into. And it's to the point where you might just have to eat taking the NFL's largest dead cap hit in league history just to get rid of Deshaun Watson. So having a guy like Jameis Winston, very likable guy, good at the podium, funny, entertaining, you know, it just makes a bad season more tolerable to get through. If you're Kevin Stefanski, you're looking forward to the coaching games with Jameis Winston. You might not be playing for anything, but you know that with Jameis Winston, you can be competitive in a lot of games. And it's fun to have a guy like Jameis Winston in that quarterback. Even with the interceptions, you know, at least he moves the ball. At least he has some explosive plays.